May came around, and with it a fresh load of conspiracy theories, ranging from the government trying to kill us by improving the Wi-Fi, to the government making up the whole illness to inject us with a cure for the illness that also does something or other that gives the internet access to our internet history or something. The thing that gets me about these people who think COVID-19 is not even real is Tim Brooke-Taylor. If the government are completely making up COVID-19 so they can improve our Wi-Fi, does that mean they killed Tim Brooke-Taylor as part of a cover-up to advance their plan? And which member of the cabinet suggested, you know what will really scare people into staying at home? What will break the people? What will make them submit to our will? If we killed one of the goodies. They were a comedy group in the 70s, look them up. I think the fact that their show has hardly ever been repeated or loved by the public in the way that Monty Python was, makes it a better plan. So Bill Oddie is the famous one, Graham Garden is the best one, so let's kill the other one. Yeah, that'll bring the country to its knees. All I'm saying is the next Avengers film is not going to be a daring mission to protect Simon from the in-betweeners. Now, the May bank holiday was moved from Monday the 4th of May to Friday the 8th of May, which meant that we'd all have a day off to do nothing on Friday instead of Monday. Calendar manufacturers were outraged at this last-minute change announced last year. Little did anyone realise that it makes sod all difference in a year when nothing happened on any day for 4 months. And while I appreciate it that moving it to the 8th of May was a nice gesture for the anniversary of VE Day, I can't help but feel cancelling May the 4th bank holiday is a bit disrespectful to those who gave their lives in the Star Wars. The Daily Mail printed a helpful timetable of when lockdown might end. The validity of their research only slightly called into question by the fact they suggested that football would resume on the 31st of June, a date which doesn't exist. They said that McDonald's would reopen on the 37th of July and pubs would reopen on the 45th of Fentoumba. The government revised its very specific stay home advice to its much vaguer stay alert in May, which was equally clear, and I was immediately fined for taking a nap and not being alert enough. The rules on leaving the house did change though. You were no longer restricted to an hour of exercise. In fact, you could leave your home in order to judge other people for leaving their homes for as long as you like. One family saved people like me from having to write a joke about this by taking it to the comedic extreme for themselves and driving to Brighton Beach to complain about how many people there were at Brighton Beach. Saving many satirists many man-hours in crafting jokes by just living the jokes. Following her unique idea, satirists were again saved the hassle of imagining the kind of crazy world that a White Lives Matter protest might look like by thoughtful people demonstrating what a clusterfuck of stupidity that would be by taking it to the very extreme of the comedic idea. But I get ahead of myself. The Lib Dems announced that they would not pick a new leader until 2021, bringing them up to a total of 13 years without leadership. Meanwhile, the Labour Party picked their new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, a man who the Daily Mail immediately exposed as the kind of bastard who would open a sanctuary for sick horses, in a scathing put-down. And before long, Boris Johnson was floundering. After a few weeks of everyone being nice to him because they thought he was going to die, Boris had to face this new Labour leader who used such dirty tricks as stringing 2 sentences together coherently and intent... Oh, fuck, because I've changed it. Stop changing. The Lib Dems announced that they would not pick a new leader until 2021, bringing them to a total of 13 years without leadership. Meanwhile, the Labour Party picked their new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, a man who the Daily Mail immediately exposed as the kind of bastard who would open a sanctuary for sick horses, in a scathing put-down. And before long, Boris Johnson was floundering. After a few weeks of everyone being nice to him because they thought he was going to die, Boris had to face this new Labour leader who used such dirty tricks as stringing 2 sentences together with a coherent meaning and intent. Jacob Rees-Mogg stepped in to suggest that an urgent telegram or messenger boy be sent to the butlers of all the other MPs, urging them to come back to Parliament immediately, as despite the obvious dangers, it would really help Boris Johnson out if there were people there to shout, "Yeah, yeah!" after everything he said. But that's the most important business of Parliament. With everyone back in Parliament, the Conservative Party got an MP to ask Boris about the Hey on Wi festival, going online only, which set him up to make a Hey on Wi-Fi joke, so it was definitely worth risking the lives of 600 MPs involved. Next week he is expected to get an MP to ask what does the right honourable gentleman get if he crosses a sheep with a kangaroo. The government now told us that a loss of smell was a symptom of COVID-19, changing their science again to "he who did not smell it dealt it." A huge U-turn for the government. The BBC put on a night of Eurovision-themed programming as the song contest was cancelled. Anyone who watched the show had to isolate for 7 days, as a lack of taste is one of the symptoms. Back in the US, Donald Trump was touting a miracle cure called hydroxychloroquine. He issued a full statement that said, "It's hydroxychloroquine, even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. If you say it loud enough, you will always sound precocious. Hydroxychloroquine. Umdiddly-umdiddly, 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 umdiddly-umdiddly." He claimed that because he was afraid to speak when he was just a lad, his father gave his nose a tweak and told him he was bad. But one day he learnt of a word that saved his aching nose. It was the biggest word you've ever heard, and it goes hydroxychloroquine. Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious, but if you say it loud enough, you will sound precocious. He claimed that he travelled all around the world, and everywhere he went, he would use his magic word, and people would say, "There goes a clever gent." When the Dukes of Maharaja pass the time of day with Donald Trump, he says his special word, and they ask him out to tea. Which is kind of interesting. He also says if you say it backwards, it's any kuako lehelikusi. But that's going a bit far, don't you think? So if the cat's got your tongue, there's no need for dismay. Just summon up this word, and you've got a lot to say. But you have to use it carefully, or it can change your life. For example, one night he said it to his girl, and now his girl's his wife. A reference to his daughter there. Things were getting seriously weird over here, with Nigel Farage calling for less restrictions on movement after police turned up at his door and asked him why he was breaking lockdown. But this was nothing compared to what was coming. As viewing figures for Daily Briefing dropped, the sitcom's writers dreamed up a movie-length special in which Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, played here by Dominic Cummings, had to explain for an hour why he drove to Durham and back, despite his own rules saying that would put people's lives at risk. His 2-hour testimony included such gems as, "I was driving home when my son needed the toilet. We pulled over in a lay-by. I saw a man in the distance." A riveting story there. Now, I should say that I didn't watch the whole press conference as I thought I had gone blind. I wasn't sure if I was blind, of course, so I thought I'll go to Legoland, and if I can see the bricks, then I am probably not blind. Anyway, turns out I wasn't blind. It was fine for me to drive all around the country spreading coronavirus. Yes, here was a man whose response to failing eyesight is to go for a drive. And regardless of your political persuasion or beliefs, if that doesn't scare you that that's the logic of the people in charge, it should. And by the way, as whenever I posted this on Facebook, people came back at me and suggested the press outside his door weren't social distancing. I know, I'm not a fan of the press. I may have found myself agreeing with Piers Morgan. I may have found myself agreeing with Piers Morgan a bit in this crisis, but that doesn't mean I'm suddenly siding with the press. It's possible for both sides to be awful, and luckily for the status quo, they were. The Piers Morgan thing is odd, isn't it? I mean, imagine explaining to someone born in 2021 that there was a time when we hated Piers Morgan and loved J.K. Rowling. What the hell is going on? We've all sought to improve ourselves during lockdown. I personally read War and Peace. I did it in the gap between the journalist asking, "What do you say to people in the North who voted Tory for the first time this election who want you out?" and Dominic Cummings coming up with an answer. I think we all knew Cummings would not be sent packing, though the fact they fired the chief nurse from the daily briefings because she didn't agree with him was a shocking twist, more villainous than I gave them credit for. However, it was nice to see him sweat for a couple of hours, wasn't it? It was also really fun to see politicians try and defend him. Michael Gove went where he has a face for on the radio the next day, and when asked, "Isn't driving to check your eyesight dangerous?" towed the party line and said, "Look, we've all done it." I'll say this for our government and for America's. They are both very good at making up a lie that's somehow worse than the thing they're trying to cover up. When Trump was asked about police shooting at black people in the street, he pointed out that they're also shooting at white people, which is really not the best defence when it's your job to make sure people don't get shot at. Look, truthfully, I can get behind Dominic Cummings deciding to go to Durham. His wife's sick, his home's being hounded by the press, and he knows there's somewhere he can go that's safe. Fine. I can take that at face value and make peace with it. But why the fuck did he decide to come back? Has the guy not heard of Zoom? I think we'd get by just fine without him, to be honest. And also, the story is so full of lies and obvious ones too, that my boy pooed in the woods / I saw a man in the distance is a classic example of adding too much unnecessary detail to a lie to make it seem more convincing. The drive to Barnard Castle to test your eyesight is just stupid, and to the claim that he was talking about the coronavirus a year ago, look at my blog, and then find out that he's edited that blog after he got back from Durham is just... How do you expect to get away with that? How is that not an obvious lie? Look, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you right now that I was taking this whole coronavirus thing seriously at the start. And if you go and check out my Facebook page for February, you'll find a post that says, "This COVID thing is really serious, man." But if you click the edit history, you'll see I originally posted a joke about how it killed more people than the Millennium Bug, because I wasn't taking it seriously, and I was lying just now. And it's such an obvious lie that once I point you in the direction of the fake evidence, it's just stupid. Why would anyone think you get away with that? The internet remembers. Of course the internet remembers. Dominic Cummings is a liar. 100%. End of story. Elon Musk tried to keep us distracted with some light entertainment during the crisis. He did this thing where he alternated, so a date that was an odd number he would be super awesome and cool, and a date that was an even number he was a dick. Among other things, we got to see his SpaceX satellites light up the sky, which looked a bit like after sending his car up there, he decided to send a traffic jam up there too. He also accidentally put his password into the baby name section and typed Ben into the password box. And he backed Kanye West's bid for president. Meanwhile, his wife Grimes offered to sell a bit of her soul online. I was looking into getting some as a gift for someone who needs a soul, but the shipping to London, Durham, London was too much. There was also a SpaceX launch that got delayed due to bad weather, which is not how it's meant to be in the movies. No, space, the final frontier. To boldly go where no one has gone before. Next Monday, as Mr. Wolf didn't pack a coat and it's a bit cold out. In June, things started looking so bad that Donald Trump had to hide in a bunker. He had to inspect a bunker to tweet about what a mess Barack Obama had left it in. Which, as excuses go, is really about as convincing as me saying I only went to the chip shop to get a little wooden fork to eat my salad with. Protests continued in the USA and the UK following the death of George Floyd, the latest in a long line of black people singled out and murdered by the police. And of course, certain people were quick to point out that we were in a state of lockdown and social distancing. Memes circulated suggested that COVID-19 only spread in pubs and football grounds and not at protests, which is kind of really missing the point. So just quickly, and there's no joke in this bit, most of the protests were peaceful. Those ones didn't make the news so much as the others. Most of the protests were socially distanced. People marching, standing apart, or sitting in parks at safe distance listening to speakers. That's not to say they all were, but most were. It's also not to say that there was no violence committed by some of the protesters. There was. But perhaps when a bunch of people are going, I could die just by leaving the house, but I need to go out of the house and say something about this situation anyway, you might want to start thinking it's fucking important what they're speaking about. Meanwhile, of course, people were quick to point out that it's just a few bad apples in the police causing a problem, which is a phrase I don't really understand because I'm sure if that same woman, let's call her Karen, bought a pack of 6 apples in Sainsbury's and 2 of them had worms in, she wouldn't go, oh well. Trump himself also said it was 1% of cops, and I don't think that quite gets how big America is, because 1% is a lot of people in America, and definitely too fucking many. Ivanka Trump had problems of her own. Her college speech in Kansas was cancelled amid protests, which led her to go on a rant about cancel culture. Less than 24 hours after her father said, this is a great day for George Floyd, to promote his fucking economic policy, and faced absolutely no consequences for that disgusting sentence. Free speech is fine. Back in this country, a statue in Bristol was torn down because it was of a slave trader. Some said that the statue should have remained as it teaches us about history. But it's worth pointing out that I have spent a long weekend in Bristol every year for the last 5 years and walked past that statue twice a day to see shows in Colston Hall. In those 50 times, I never knew Colston was a slave owner. Protesters shouldn't have pulled that statue down. Ofsted should have chucked him in the sea years ago. Things went from bad to worse as the nation forced to stay at home and watch TV had to cope with a sudden drop from 12 episodes of Fawlty Towers to just 11. And this lasted almost 36 hours. And because it was the episode with the Germans, viewers gathered in London doing that funny thing Basil does where he holds his hand in the air like some kind of salute, as White Lives Matter protesters showed solidarity with police by making sure police had extra employment over the weekend by hurling bricks at them, pissing on memorials to their dead colleagues, singing racist songs and doing Nazi salutes, all to raise awareness for the plight of... I'll get back to you about who it's on the plight of, but it's someone must be suffering, probably, it seems. But in the slogan of those racist marchers, let's keep it light. Back to COVID. Before the government decided to give restaurant diners half-price meals all August, they originally had a plan to cancel dinners for poor children throughout the whole of August, until Marcus Rashford pointed out that that's kind of evil, in what was the biggest intervention in politics since Michael Owen asked Tony Blair to have another stab at the Good Friday Agreement. Boris Johnson must really have been shitting himself that Paul Pogba didn't say anything about firing Dominic Cummings. But to be fair, it was nice to see celebrities using their voice to make real positive change. Or they could do what Aaron Paul and Bryce Dallas Howard did and make a weird black and white video where Bryce Dallas Howard says, and I quote, "I take full responsibility for racial violence in this country." Which, I mean, do you? Is Bryce Dallas Howard the villain of this whole thing all along? I can't imagine there was any imaginable thing in recent months that would lead celebrities to imagine that a black and white video filmed in mansions the rest of us can only imagine living in, where they say nothing of any real value, would be a good idea. I imagine there was no way they could have known that would get a backlash. Imagine. Oh yeah, remember that Imagine video? No, them neither. In mid-May, of course, you'll remember, we all got the government's Test and Trace app. Well, hang on, there's a note here. Add joke to this and update date to whenever the fuck this actually happens. Or if you can't be bothered to make sure it happens, just ask people who work in the restaurant and pub trade to take care of writing a joke about it for you, like they're definitely qualified to do. Donald Trump got right to the heart of the problem by suggesting that if we stopped testing people, then the number of cases would stop going up. This is, to be fair, a good idea. I stopped weighing myself at the start of lockdown, and as far as I know, I haven't put on a single pound in that time. His press secretary later informed the American public that Trump had been joking, just 5 minutes after she tried to explain to President Trump that he had been joking. So more of lockdown has been eased today, which kind of raises the question, doesn't it? What has Dominic Cummings been up to now? Yeah, today's developments are the pubs can reopen from the 4th of July, or as it will now be called, Independence Day. Yeah, well, wait, I'm never getting sick of that pun. That's probably my proudest achievement in life. Going to be the first line of my obituary one day. The guy gave the world that. So from now on, you should remain 2 metres away from others, unless you're in a pub or you can't be bothered, in which case 1 metre's probably fine, you know. Those people who wish to speak to the manager are at a higher risk and must remain indoors for a period of about 40 to 50 years. Hairdressers can get no closer to you than a number 4 buzz cut, but cannot do your nails. If you go to one of those Warhammer shops, you must remain 5 metres away from girls. If you go to a White Lives Matter protest, you must remain 70 years behind other people. If you're at a Donald Trump rally, don't worry, there'll be plenty of space. If you're at a Joe Biden rally, which is like a Donald Trump rally but only pronounced differently, you should remain at least an arm's length away from Joe Biden at all times. If you can see Barnard Castle, you are too close. At cricket games, the England team will bat for no more than 1 day at a time. Arsenal players will be allowed to fall to the floor and claim a foul has been committed if an opposition player comes within 3 metres of them. Cinemas are to remain closed until furlough ends, as 80% of your average wage is less than 1 popcorn anyway. Gyms will remain closed, but parks will be open. You must stay 10 metres away from anyone who tells you about their exercise regime though. 10 metres distance or 1 belt length. Libraries will be allowed to reopen, which is a huge U-turn for this Conservative government. So the last episode of Coronavirus Daily Briefing has now aired. But the BBC are expected to announce a second series of Daily Briefing just as soon as the pubs reopen. In fact, hundreds of devoted fans peacefully protested to demand a second series of the Coronavirus Daily Briefing on Bournemouth Beach yesterday. In the meantime, the BBC has announced a new range of fan-pleasing spin-offs. Dominic Cummings' UK Road Trips is basically an episode of Top Gear, but blindfolded. A brand new panel game with Laura Kuenssberg, in which teams of celebrities lose points if they accidentally answer her questions. There's a revival of an old radio panel show with Robert Peston, in which the ITV political editor speaks for 30 minutes without hesitation, repetition, or actually answering a question. Chris Whitty's Graphs is the ideal tabletop book for this Christmas, where every graph also doubles as a tube map. Meanwhile, all the episodes of Coronavirus Daily Briefing are now available on iPlayer. Yes, every episode of the spin-off from Love Actually that successfully recast Gary Busey as the British Prime Minister, originally made favours by Hugh Grant. Relive such classic episodes as the movie-length special where Dominic Cummings justifies visiting Barnard Castle for nearly 2 hours. The hilarious moment when Boris Johnson joined forces with the Brighton super spreader and admits he shook hands with everyone, literally everyone, in a hospital. The episode of the version with Grant Shapps from a parallel universe where everyone for some reason cares about the A66. The surprising plot twist where the UK's chief nurse is killed off at a crucial moment for failing to agree with Dominic Cummings. Priti Patel appears in classic episode The Mona the Vampire's Smile, and it has all episodes from both the Stay Home and Stay Alert eras. Relive the thrilling terror of Michael Gove, the smouldering sexual thrills of Rishi Sunak, and the insert least appropriate emotion to be displaying at a given time of Matt Hancock. Fans of that bit in Columbo where he's leaving and asks just one more question that incriminates the killer will love the moment someone asked Matt Hancock if people on the Isle of Wight should stay home or not. And don't forget there's the studio audience laughter track. As studio audiences were banned under social distancing, this was created by asking Matt Hancock if the NHS Test and Trace app has been a disaster. Also available, it's on DVD, and following the success of Justice League The Snyder Cut comes Coronavirus The Johnson Cut. It's the same series, with all the bits said by the experts cut out. There's a commentary from Boris Johnson, Chris Whitty and that other one, where Boris Johnson reveals what he was really thinking at the time. Script by Dominic Cummings. Every episode across a 10-disc DVD set, plus hilarious outtakes of all the times they fucked up across a 30-disc DVD set. And for the first time on DVD, the full, uncut 2-hour version of Robert Peston's Questions. Plus the hilarious American remake featuring Donald Duck as president, including a mixology cocktail lesson hosted by Barry Scott. There's also a range of international versions, but it's not worth comparing those to the British versions, apart from the really bad ones. And a special episode of The Twilight Zone, set during that week where for some strange reason everybody really loved Boris Johnson, and started acting like nobody could ever criticise him ever, like he was a national hero or Stephen Fry or something. Remember that? What the fuck was that about? Like, joking aside, that's one of the weirdest things about the whole of 2020. And 2 lucky DVD buyers will win golden tickets to the Coronavirus Fan Convention at the Excel Centre in... Oh, shit, sorry. That's just been closed down and turned into a hospital that we never actually needed. So, convention's off, I'm afraid. Coronavirus Daily Briefing, the winner of the Booker Prize for Fiction, the BAFTA for Best Actor for Dominic Cummings, and an Emmy for the most gratuitous use of the Queen in a primetime BBC show. Available now on DVD for just £19.99. And if you can definitely afford that, why not make a 99-year-old man walk around in the garden to pay for it anyway, then keep praising him yourselves to make you look like a hero. Available in all good Woolworths from mid-May. So I've just learnt that this DVD will not be available, and it will be on Netflix and Apple TV after all. Hopefully sometime before the end of the year.